All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Food as Medicine with the Food Bank of Santa Barbara County. My name is Kayla Malari. I am a registered dietitian nutritionist and nutrition specialist at the Food Bank. Today, we will be discussing heartburn hacks, food and lifestyle strategies that ease acid reflux. Welcome or welcome back. So just to go over some logistics, since this is a webinar event, we are unable to see your faces or hear your voices, but please type any comments in the chat or any questions in the Q&A section located at the bottom of your screen. At the end of this presentation, we will have time to go through the questions. I will host this Q&A portion and be the moderator, so I will be looking out in the Q&A portion as well as the chat. We will also launch 2 poll questions. Answers are anonymous. We encourage everyone to participate. This webinar will be recorded and posted on our Food Bank YouTube channel. On our channel, you'll be able to access all presentations and give us about a week or so, and then we'll have this one up as well. We will also be sending this recording via email to anyone who has registered. Lastly, if you are looking for more nutrition resource, please check out Food as Medicine, the podcast, which streams both on Apple and Google Podcasts. Now, I'd like to introduce Vibeke Weiland and Randy Miller, nutrition experts in our community. Thank you both for the many, many contributions to Food as Medicine and for being here today and for preparing the presentation you have for us.
Okay, so we're just going to introduce ourselves real quickly here. I am Vibeke Weiland. I'm a retired nutritional therapy practitioner. I'm a member of the Nutritional Therapy Association and also the National Association of Nutrition Professionals. And even though I'm retired, I still attend those conferences and try to kind of stay up to date on everything that's going on in my world. I'm here because I have learned both through my personal experience and through working with clients just how powerful a medicine food can be. And so now I do work with the food bank, and my main purpose here is just to share as much information as I can with our community.
And hello, everybody. My name is Randy Miller, and I'm an integrative health and nutrition coach. What does that mean? That means I support people in making diet and lifestyle changes so they can reach their particular health goals in a way that feels sustainable to them. So those goals can be anything from weight loss to digestive disorders, to getting rid of joint pain or brain fog or sleep problems, autoimmune symptoms, anything really. So I'm very passionate about food, always have been, and the power of food to heal. And that is a big mission of the food bank. So I'm really happy to be here and be part of the Food as Medicine series. One disclaimer before we get started. We are not doctors, and we don't even play doctors on TV. So everything we say today is meant purely as education and information and not as medical advice. We always strongly encourage you to discuss any and all of what we say with your doctor. And there's a lot of good info today, lots of tips and interventions. So feel free to take notes, but as Kayla said, the replay will be posted by the food bank afterwards, and you'll receive it in email.
Okay, so today we are talking about a topic that is near and dear to many people's hearts, quite literally, acid reflux. A couple of other terms that you might have heard for acid reflux are heartburn. Heartburn is actually just it's a symptom of acid reflux. And GERD, G-E-R-D, which stands for gastroesophageal reflux disease. This is a more serious or chronic version of acid reflux. So people who have heartburn more than twice a week are commonly considered to have GERD. Let me get to my next slide. Oh, okay, I'm having a technical difficulty. Hold on. All right. Oh, I came back on. Thank you. Okay, so we have an agenda for you. The First thing we're going to cover today is the definition and symptoms of heartburn or GERD. We're going to talk about why it happens, what's going on inside your body. We're going to talk about the importance of stomach acid to your health. We're going to cover the role of antacids and acid suppressing drugs, which are very commonly used. We're going to give you 6 different tips that you can try for dealing with heartburn, and it's a mix and match scenario. You can see what works for you. We're going to talk about a few other lifestyle solutions. And lastly, we're going to quickly touch on some supplements that you could talk to your healthcare practitioner about. And right now, we're actually going to do our very first poll. So I'm going to turn it over to Kayla.
Okay, so I've just launched the first poll.
I interrupt you. It's that you're showing the second poll.
Oops. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've just launched the first poll. And the question is, have you experienced any symptoms listed below? Select all that may apply. So first one is burning in the chest or throat, hot or sour taste in the mouth, tightness in the chest or shortness of breath, chronic dry cough, sore throat, or hoarseness. And we'll give you about 30 seconds to go ahead and plug in your answers. All right, we have a few people still selecting. All right, it looks like everyone has selected, so I'll go ahead and end the poll and we will share the results. So about 83% of our participants chosen burning in the chest or sore throat, or chest or throat, sorry. 33% tightness in chest or shortness of breath, and then about 50% chronic dry cough, sore throat, or hoarseness. All right, you can continue on.
All right. Is that poll going to go off my screen?
It should. Isn't it off yet?
I'll just hit the little red dot. I thought it would disappear on its own. All right. So we just did a poll about the symptoms that you might have experienced. And we can see that several of you have had multiple of these symptoms. We're going to quickly go through them here. The most common one, and I think that showed up in the poll, is a burning in the chest or throat. It's kind of the most obvious symptom, but there are others, such as having a hot or sour taste in your mouth, or like mild regurgitations, tightness in the chest or shortness of breath, a chronic dry cough kind of feeling, or sore throat or hoarseness, difficulty swallowing, or a feeling that you have like some food or some mucus or something kind of stuck in the back of your throat. And we want to emphasize on those last two, we actually put asterisks by them, because if you do have those last two symptoms, either one of them, you should see a doctor, because they can also be indicative of other more serious problems, and you would definitely want to rule those out. All right, so let's take a quick look at what is going on inside your body when you have acid reflux. Here we can see some labeled body parts, and you're probably pretty familiar with them. And in a perfect world, you take food into your mouth, it goes down the esophagus to your stomach, and then it just continues on down through the digestive tract from there. So food should only be moving in one direction, unless you're sick and you have to throw up, but that's a totally separate scenario. So this is under normal circumstances. So acid reflux is when the contents of your stomach, that food mixed with stomach acid, go in the wrong direction. They travel from your stomach back up through your esophagus. And it can come just up to the bottom of your esophagus maybe, or it can go all the way up into your throat sometimes. It's variable. Now, GERD, the more chronic version of acid reflux, happens when that closure of your lower esophagus, which connects to your stomach, gets weak or relaxes when it shouldn't. And we're going to take a little closer look at that. So here we have kind of a couple of illustrations on the left and right. of where the esophagus attaches to the stomach. And you can get a little better idea of that closure or valve or sphincter. The technical term is it's a sphincter at the bottom of the esophagus. And its official name, it's a very apt name, is the lower esophageal sphincter, or LES. This is the sphincter that needs to stay closed, like on that left diagram, to keep the acid and stomach contents from traveling up the esophagus. The right image is illustrating what happens when it gets too relaxed or gets open for some reason, which is frequently the case with GERD. So the LES is meant to open only to let food pass through and then close again, because its main job is to keep stomach acid out of the esophagus. The stomach is specifically designed to be very, very, very acidic. It has a very thick layer of mucus that protects it. The esophagus, the tube that goes down to your stomach, is not designed for acidity. It does not have a mucus layer protecting it. So even a tiny amount of acid, what might be way too little for the stomach, will cause a burning sensation in the esophagus because it's just not designed to handle it. So why do you think your stomach is designed to be so acidic? Turns out that stomach acid is very important.
Stomach acid is important for two main reasons that we're going to talk about today. And here we see the first one. So stomach acid is critical for digesting your food, especially your protein and your minerals. So stomach acid is what activates enzymes and other essential factors that cause your food to break down. And breaking down food is a synonym for digestion. So if food doesn't break down or get digested, you can't absorb the nutrients from it. And you need those nutrients to live. That's why you're eating in the first place. So stomach acid is essential for extracting amino acids from protein and absorbing vitamins and minerals like calcium, like iron, like zinc, like vitamin B12. Now, the second reason stomach acid is so important is that it's actually part of our immune system. And I know that can sound a bit weird, like what? Stomach acid is part of our immune system? But it is. It actually kills pathogens and bacteria that come in on our food all the time so that we don't get sick every time we eat. So we want that to happen, right? We want our stomach acid to sterilize our food and protect us from bugs. So that's a good thing. And before we go on to our next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Kayla for our second poll question related to stomach acid.
Thank you. Okay, so our second and our last poll question. Let me go ahead and relaunch the poll. All right. Are you able to see it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. In the past, have you been told or believed that heartburn happens because you have too much stomach acid? And here we have a single choice, and we will give you about 30 to 45 seconds to go ahead and input your answers.
So far, it's looking like 38% of people are saying yes, and 63% of people are saying no.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's more than I would have expected on the nose.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I think that's about it. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll.
Okay.
So yeah, so 38% said yes and 63% said no.
Great. Well, you guys are with it. Hold on, it just keeps popping up. Okay. So very often, if you have heartburn, it's likely you've been told that you have too much stomach acid. So maybe you're taking or have taken an antacid or an acid blocker, like one of these you see on your screen here. There's a lot of them. So you can see that the market is just flooded with these products. And in case you are wondering, it is a $10 billion industry. So a lot of people buying these products. So these acid blockers can help us feel better, but there are a couple of potential problems if we take them long term. And long-term can mean longer than 14 days in certain cases, so only 2 weeks. And I know a lot of people can take these for months, years, even decades. So those problems stem from the fact that these meds work as you'd expect, by decreasing your stomach acid. Now, we just talked about 2 reasons before the poll why stomach acid is so critical for health. So we said digesting your protein and your minerals and protecting us from pathogens. So reducing or eliminating your stomach acid by taking those blockers we saw regularly has 2 corresponding serious downsides. So first, impaired nutrient absorption. So we just said stomach acid is critical for digestion, right? Reducing your stomach acid means impairing that digestion. And it means you can't extract those nutrients, particularly protein and minerals, from your food as well, because it's not being broken down as effectively. So this means you end up shortchanging your cells of the nutrients they need to function. Now, the second reason is decreased resistance to infection from pathogens. So we just talked about how our stomach acid protects us from the bacteria and the pathogens that come in our food, and it's part of our immune system. But a stomach without much acid is in many ways a perfect environment to harbor that bacteria. So it's dark, it's warm, it's moist, and it's full of nutrients. So people who have low enough stomach acid are more prone to food poisoning, and they also can set themselves up for bacteria to proliferate down the rest of the digestive tract, which can cause chronic inflammation and digestive discomfort. So the bottom line here is that your body really makes stomach acid for a reason, and without it, you can have a lot of problems.
So up until now, if you are suffering or have suffered from heartburn, you might have been thinking of stomach acid as a bad or problematic thing. And now we're telling you that it's a good thing. And like Randy said, maybe you've been told that your heartburn is because you have too much stomach acid or maybe too much of a good thing. Although from that poll, surprisingly, most of you didn't say that. So that was kind of eye-opening for me. But you could see where it would seem intuitively true because you have that burning sensation. And the pharmaceutical industry does spend billions of dollars telling you that it is true. So the most common myth about heartburn is that it is caused by too much stomach acid. And I'm just going to reiterate, the problem is generally not too much, but actually too little. And the question then that people naturally come to is, how is it possible to feel that burning sensation and think that there might not be enough acid? Well, the problem is that things are getting pushed up the esophagus. They are in the wrong location, which doesn't necessarily mean there's too much. It's a location issue. It's not a quantity issue. And even a tiny amount of acid in your esophagus would burn. So then the next question becomes, why would food and acid get pushed up that way? Well, this is commonly due to too much pressure inside the abdomen. And the technical term is increased abdominal pressure, or IAP. And that causes pressure and pushes things upward. So if we're following the logical thread, the next question would be, how does this pressure or IAP build up? And this is exactly where we come back to insufficient or not enough stomach acid. So we're going to put it really simply, if there's not enough acid in the stomach, we end up with the 2 problems we've mentioned. First, stomach acid provides the signal for your body to secrete digestive enzymes. And we've talked about protein and minerals. They get digested in the stomach, but it also has downstream effects. So these digestive enzymes further digest or break down your food after the stomach. So without enough acid, that signal for those enzymes to get released is weak, and food is generally not well digested. When this happens to the carbohydrates in your food, they end up being maldigested and left to be fermented by bacteria in that warm, moist environment. And those fermenting carbs give off gas that causes upward pressure back toward the LES, that lower esophageal sphincter. And then 2, just to pile on, Like we also said, low stomach acid also allows bacteria to overgrow. And the more bacteria there are in the stomach and small intestine, the more those bacteria eat your food and give off even more gas. And those gases also create pressure. So it's kind of a double whammy. We have too many poorly digested carbohydrates laying around, and we have too many bacteria overgrowing and fermenting those carbs and creating gas. And all of this gas creates that IAP, that intra-abdominal pressure, that can push the stomach contents upward and cause acid reflux. So it stands to reason, given all of this, that one way to reduce the occurrence of heartburn is actually to increase stomach acid rather than try to decrease it. Because increasing it will, one, improve digestion, and two, reduce bacterial overgrowth. So both of these things would help reduce gas. And now we're going to get into some tips for doing just that, increasing stomach acid. So these are some things that you can do before you eat, before you even sit down to the table. And across the top there, we've got some kind of liquid digestive enhancers, I'll call them. And the first one is apple cider vinegar, generally 1 to 2 tablespoons diluted in 4 to 8 ounces of water. You can kind of play with those ratios and figure out where your sweet spot is. Generally 15 to 20 minutes before a meal. Lemon has a similar effect. It's a little milder than apple cider vinegar. So again, that's kind of a personal experimentation thing. And if you do either one of those, use a straw, because the acidity in those liquids will damage the enamel on your teeth if you do them regularly, and we don't want that. So just be sure to use a straw. And then on the right, upper right, we have digestive bitters, and they come in different, formats, but you can find them at like Whole Foods or any grocery store. And these basically have a similar function. They get the whole digestive system activated. They create kind of a puckery effect and get those juices flowing. So lemon, apple cider vinegar, and digestive bitters are all very simple, low cost, and gentle ways to stimulate digestion if you have just occasional or mild symptoms. And then similarly on the bottom, we have more things that you can nibble on. And what they all have in common is that they're kind of tangy and they make you pucker up, like the top items there. There's some umeboshi plums. That's a Japanese sort of digestive aid. If you ever go to sushi bars, you might be familiar with pickled ginger. That plays a similar role. And then on the lower right there, we just have sort of lots of different pickled tangy things. You could have those before a meal to get things going. And these are solutions that are pretty great for everybody, not just people with heartburn, because honestly, as we get older, we all could benefit from stimulating our digestive juices before we eat. So let's get on to our second tip.
Okay, well, our second tip is for during meals. So another way to decrease gas, or IAP, is to reduce the number of refined carbs you eat each day. And when I say refined carbs, I'm talking about sugar and most flours. So that means just checking in with yourself around your carbohydrate consumption. So are you eating a bagel for breakfast and then a sandwich and chips for lunch and then pasta for dinner or pizza? So you may want to experiment with a lower carb diet just for a few weeks. Try increasing your veggies and your high quality protein and fats and reducing your carbs, and see if that impacts your acid reflux at all. Now, why would that work? So depriving those bacteria that Vibeke talked about, or organisms, of their quick and easy food source means they can't consume those carbs and give off that gas, creating that pressure, right? The less carb there is to ferment in the system, the less gas and pressure will be created to push up on that LES. So we want to be clear with this tip. We're not saying you have to give up all carbs forever or go keto or anything extreme. We are not saying that. What we're saying is that we encourage you to experiment with reducing whatever high carb foods you tend to eat regularly. Just do it for a few weeks as an experiment and see if your symptoms improve. So it's just for you to kind of know more about your body. So let's move on to the next tip. Tip number 3 is to remove any trigger foods and see how it feels. What are the common trigger foods for acid reflux? And many of you may already know about these usual suspects. So starting at the top left, we've got coffee, we've got peppermint, chocolate, tomatoes, onions, peppers, and citrus. So these are very common that people who have reflux don't do well with these. Now, it doesn't mean you have to eliminate these foods forever, and everyone is different. So some or all or one of these may not bother you personally. The question is, how do you figure it out? Well, the most reliable way is to just eliminate all of them at once for at least a week or two, and then slowly introduce each one back one at a time. So each time you add back a single food, let's say you did it with chocolate, you'd eliminate all of these, and then you said, okay, chocolate's what I'm going to bring back first. So you'd bring back only the chocolate, you'd wait 2 or 3 days, and you'd see how you feel. If your acid reflux is still good, then you keep the chocolate in. If you're still having the acid reflux, chocolate goes back out. And you need to wait 2 or 3 days to see. So if your symptoms come back, you take it out again and then try to introduce another food for a few days. If your symptoms don't come back, you leave it in and you move on to the next food. So as we said, everyone is different, and some people may be sensitive to foods that are not on the common triggers list. And other common food sensitivities that Vibeke and I have seen are eggs for some people, dairy for some people, shellfish, corn, and soy. So you can test those as well. So that was eggs, dairy, shellfish, corn, and soy. And just a quick note that sensitivities, food sensitivities, which is what we're talking about here, those are different from allergies. So if you know you're allergic to a food, just stay away from it. Don't experiment with it.
All right, let's keep going with things that you can do during your meals. Another common cause of heartburn, two kind of related causes actually, are eating too fast and overeating. They do tend to go hand in hand. So the big recommendation here is to slow way down and chew your food very thoroughly. This will just naturally give your body time to send those appropriate satiety signals to tell you that you're full. Now, if you want to take that another step further, you might want to experiment with cutting your portions down. And one kind of, it's kind of a hack for doing this is to try, put your food on your plate like you always do, and try eating just like a half to 2/3 of your meal, and just set that plate aside for at least an hour. Give it about an hour. And, tell yourself you can still have it, but you're just going to wait an hour. And then an hour later, ask yourself if you're still really hungry. Check in with your body, and you might be surprised to find that you're not. Now, some people who do experience heartburn just do better with smaller, more frequent meals, and you might already be there if you do suffer from heartburn. It's certainly an option. But I would suggest that while you're doing smaller, more frequent meals, you're also incorporating some of these other tricks and maybe gradually spacing your meals out to, 2 or 3 meals a day. But to get you through, definitely it's an option. All right, tip number 5, minimize water and drinks during meals. And I want to emphasize during meals. And why would we suggest this? It's because those liquids dilute your stomach acid. They make it less potent. So you want to drink just enough water, to just moisturize your food and enjoy the meal. That's fine. And we definitely want you drinking plenty of water between meals, because we do absolutely recommend that you stay hydrated. So, hydrate between meals, and limit water just during and immediately after a meal. This is something you can experiment with and see how you feel. And all right, last tip, food-related tip. We mentioned mineral absorption earlier, and when we were talking about why stomach acid is so important. The stomach uses the mineral zinc in particular to produce hydrochloric acid, or stomach acid. So you need stomach acid to digest zinc, and you need zinc to make stomach acid. It's kind of a perfect positive feedback loop. So if you do suffer from heartburn, you might want to consider tracking your diet for a week or so, just to see how much zinc you're consuming. So that's what you're looking for, milligrams of zinc in your meals. And you can do some Googling and find the ways to calculate these things, and we can certainly answer questions about that. Now, if you do this and you find that your diet is low in zinc, you might want to consider increasing the foods on this slide in your diet. So across the top there, we have the best animal sources of zinc. And I want to give a big shout out to oysters in particular. They are zinc superheroes. I actually put 2 photos of them on there just to really emphasize the point. A half a dozen oysters actually have 3 to 5 times the amount of zinc as 3 ounces of beef. And beef is the next best animal source. Now I'm showing crab there and turkey. These are sort of the top 4 animal sources of zinc. And then on the bottom row, we have some good plant sources. We've got soybeans, pine nuts, cashews, and sunflower seeds as top of the list there. The animal sources are good ones of bioavailable, very bioavailable zinc. And bioavailable means able to be retained and used by the body, easy for the body to access. The nuts and legumes on the bottom, they are good plant sources of zinc. They contain zinc, but that zinc is less bioavailable than from the animal sources. So if you are vegan or vegetarian, we just ask that you be aware of that and be aware that you may need more than the standard RDA of zinc if you're sourcing exclusively from plants. Now, if you're considering supplementation with zinc, which is an option, we want to strongly recommend that you work with a healthcare practitioner because too much zinc can actually make you deficient in copper. They compete with each other in the body. So you don't want to do this unsupervised, or you could set yourself up for actually a whole different set of problems. So that's only for supplementation. You can eat all the zinc-rich foods you want, but if you're going to supplement, work with a doctor.
Okay, so that covers a lot of the foods, but what are some other common causes or aggravators of heartburn? So I'm sure many of you already know stress is a big one. Many people notice that their heartburn and indigestion flares up when they're stressed. Now, granted, it's hard not to be stressed these days, so I'm not going to say just reduce your stress like it's so easy. But if you can find a way before meals, specifically before meals, to take 2 or 3 minutes and to relax, and whether that is just deep breathing or sitting outside in a garden or walking around the block once, or thinking of someone you love or something you're grateful for, or a blessing, something that just turns on your, relaxation response, and then begin your meal, that could help reduce heartburn from that meal. And it's a cheap and easy thing to try. Smoking is another aggravator. So if you do smoke, this might be an incentive to try to quit. Drugs or pharmaceuticals can aggravate heartburn. So if you are taking medicine, and even if your doctor tells you the med you're on isn't the problem, we encourage you to go read that pamphlet of side effects that comes listed with that med. And if reflux or GERD or heartburn or indigestion is listed on there, bring that pamphlet back to your doctor and discuss alternative medications. Next on the bottom left is H. pylori. So very often people with heartburn can have a bacterial infection called H. pylori. Now, H. pylori, that particular bacterium, doesn't like acidic environments. So it lives in your stomach and it tries to reduce the acidity. So if you have chronic heartburn or GERD, consider talking to your doctor about testing for H. pylori. And that way, if it is a factor, there are treatments, natural and pharmaceutical, that you can use to try to eliminate it. And that can get rid of a source of potential problem. Next is pregnancy or obesity. They're both potential causes of reflux, which makes sense when you think about it, right? So we talked about the role of pressure, pushing food and acid up into the esophagus. Well, having a mass in your midsection can definitely cause upward pressure. And last is age. So the older we get, the more likely it is that we can develop heartburn. Researchers really aren't clear if this is because of a change in esophageal characteristics, if it's a lifestyle thing, or if it's increased use of medication as we age. But they do know that age does seem to be correlated. And one thing we know is that it's not because our stomach acid production increases as we age. So in fact, as we age, our ability to produce stomach acid declines. So a 40-year-old can have actually half the stomach acid of a 20-year-old, but it's the elderly who most commonly suffer from acid reflux. So now that you know these other common causes, our hope is that you can work on reducing or eliminating any of these factors if they apply to you. But what else is there? So Vibeka's going to explore some lifestyle interventions that you can try.
All right, a few lifestyle interventions. On that top row, which should be showing to you now, we have some things that we suggest you avoid doing. So don't eat late at night. Don't eat right before you go to bed, because gravity actually does play a helpful role in digestion. And we recommend that you allow it to work for you whenever possible. Another one is to not eat right before you exercise. And we're talking about vigorous exercise. A post-meal walk is actually a lovely thing to do. But vigorous exercise tends to shut digestion down. And what we really want is for digestion to be working and for that food to be wanting to go down. And then on the right, this one might not be super intuitive, but avoid ice cold drinks. This recommendation actually has its roots in Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine traditions. And it's just sort of an easy, free thing that you can experiment with to see if it makes a difference for you. You can switch, if you're an ice water drinker, switch to room temperature, or even slightly warmed water can be helpful for a lot of people. And then on the bottom, we've got some ideas for things that you could increase in your life or bring in some way. There are several teas that are known to soothe esophageal tissue. They're very soothing. They're slippery elm, they're marshmallow root, and fennel teas all have a similar effect that way. And I would add that sitting down for a soothing cup of tea can also play a role in alleviating stress, which does contribute to heartburn. So that one, you can get a double plus on that one. And then the other thing you could think about bringing in is probiotic foods, if you tolerate them. We're just showing some different examples. You see some fermented dairy there, kefir and yogurt, and some different fermented vegetables. There's kimchi, sauerkraut, some Japanese natto, miso, and tempeh. There's plenty of probiotic foods out there. If you do opt for the fermented dairy, like the kefir or the yogurt, we'd recommend you go for plain full fat versions and not the non-fat kind of additive and sugar filled ones. So those are those.
Okay, and lastly, there are just a few supplements that can help a lot with acid reflux, and we recommend talking to your doctor before ever starting a supplement. We're not endorsing any particular brands here. We just wanted to show you what they look like and that these things do exist. So on the left, you can see betaine HCl supplements. That, as well as other digestive enzymes, can be really helpful. The betaine HCl, especially if you can't do the lemon or the vinegar, or you are doing that, but you're not really getting results with that, you can take that betaine HCl, which is hydrochloric acid, and you're basically adding stomach acid back into your stomach, which helps with the breakdown of your proteins. So you're getting a little extra boost there to help with that protein breakdown. There are ways to figure out dosages for this to get the most out of it. And again, we really recommend you work with a healthcare practitioner, because there are some people who may not do well on these, especially if you have H. pylori or ulcers or IBS. But I've had clients have very good results with betaine HCl and other digestive enzymes. The second one is deglycerinated licorice, and we're going to call it DGL because that's much easier to say. It's very soothing, and it reduces symptoms and repairs the lining of the digestive tract. So it's a good choice. Mastic gum is the next one, and it's a sap or a resin that comes from the mastic tree. So this is a great choice because it can also help with H. pylori. So if that's a factor, then the mastic gum can actually be doing double duty there. Next is zinc carnosine. That can be a powerful choice, and that is often used by healthcare practitioners to protect and repair that mucosal lining of the digestive tract. And like Vibeke said before, always work with a practitioner when taking supplements, but especially when considering supplementing with zinc, because you don't want to throw your copper off there. Then lastly, we've got decolorized and purified aloe vera juice. So this is always a helpful digestive supplement, but it is contraindicated in pregnancy if you're diabetic or if you're taking diuretics or laxatives. So again, that's why we say work with a healthcare practitioner, because there can be complications and we don't want you to just go out and try something and cause other problems. So if you're interested in using supplement support for GERD, hopefully this list gives you a good starting point for initiating a conversation with your healthcare provider. So that's all we have for you today. We want to thank everyone for joining us. We really hope there was some helpful action items in there to be implemented in your daily life that can make a difference for you. Vibeke and I are going to stay online now and take some questions. So if you have any questions, please stay on and ask. Otherwise, feel free to drop off. And thanks again for attending this Food Bank Food is Medicine webinar. It was great to have everybody here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy and Vibeke. We have a few questions on the chat. One, can you do apple cider vinegar capsules? And I think this was dealing with stomach acid before meals.
I would say yes.
I would say yes, although, I mean, you hear a lot of different comments. I have heard that they're less effective than taking the actual liquid in, and it might be just because the capsules allow you to bypass that mouth experience. And it's the mouth experience that kind of, it's the pucker that happens that gets things going. So I think, it is acid and you are introducing it there. So I'm going to say yes, but it might not be quite as powerful an effect.
Right. So if you can do the actual lemon or vinegar, I think we'd both agree that would be a better choice. But if you just can't do that, then and the apple cider vinegar capsules work, then by all means.
Have at it.
Great, thank you. We're getting a lot of thank yous and very helpfuls in the chat, so thank you both. I just want to call out to any participants who have any questions. Please feel free to enter that into the chat now. One question I had, would kombucha be a good option to increase stomach acid or also for the probiotic effects?
Sure. Yeah. And to the extent that it again, stimulates that, they can vary in how sour or puckery they are, but it can stimulate digestion, and definitely on the probiotic end, it would be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Kombucha and water kefir. So if you're trying to avoid caffeine, since caffeine is one of those triggers for a lot of people, kombucha is usually made with black tea, so it can be caffeinated. So if caffeine is a problem for you, you can also try water kefir or water kefir, however you'd like to pronounce it, as another alternative probiotic drink.
Thank you, Randy. I've actually never tried water kefir, so I think that's definitely something I'm gonna try out.
Just look for the ones that have low sugar, because sometimes those kombuchas and kefirs,
yes,
they can have a lot of sugar in them.
One other question. What is like the relationship between alcohol and GERD?
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't have an immediate answer for that. I would have to go and do some researching.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Yeah. Alcohol, it's absorbed through the stomach. There may be some interaction there. Are you asking because you've heard of something, or?
Yeah, I just hear that most people who, after drinking may feel like those symptoms as well, and if there's just kind of some relation there.
Yeah, it's interesting because alcohol never came up in all of the reading that we did for this. So, but I guess, we didn't search for it specifically either. So I think we might want to just circle back on that one.
Yeah, and I'd be curious too about sort of spirits versus something like red wine. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if red wine would
Right.
add a little bit of acidity and would be helpful versus something like a vodka or tequila. We'd have to look into that, but it's a great
Yeah.
question.
It is a great question.
Great. Thank
Yeah.
you. We will
Okay.
check back in on that answer. Don't have any other questions in the chat. Any last minute takeaways, Rebecca and Randy? If if what's the one small step that you'd like everyone to encourage doing?
I would probably say stress relief, whatever
You
you
know,
can do.
Yeah. And I was going to say slow down, which is in that same category. Just slow down, everybody.
Yeah. And try not to, watch the news and then go for dinner.
Yeah. Yeah. Or try to go to sleep.
Yeah. And to really look for that, everybody's different. Some people, love meditating. Some people hate meditating. Some people love exercising. Some people hate exercising. So I think it's really finding that thing that speaks to you, that makes you relax and feel good, and
Mhm.
really integrating that into your everyday. I think that is such a powerful change maker on so many different levels.
Exactly. Thank you both. And I think you both mentioned that throughout the presentation. You all offered many, many tips, but really just whatever fits best for your lifestyle and whatever you like. So, everyone works differently, everyone eats differently, and everyone manages stress differently, but finding that balance for yourself, definitely. And thank you both for the amazing tips and the amazing information. Thank you for joining Food as Medicine. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Thanks.
Bye.